War. War never changes. Except the weapons get cooler. A couple weeks ago, I went on a school trip for college to the Westhoek, the most western region of Belgium. This area is well known over here for its many war ruins and scars, left over by the devastation of World War I. During the Great War, the neutral Belgium was invaded by Germany in order to more quickly and easily reach Paris. However, the Germans would underestimate the fighting spirit of the Belgians and the quick involvement of the French and the British. And they'd end up bogged down in a terrible trench warfare right here near Ypres. Ypres in English. There are many well-known battles famous for being bloodbaths, but arguably the deadliest battle in history was fought right here, the Battle of Ypres. That's why my region has an area known as the Scarred Wastelands, serving as a memory to an equally devastating war in the Humesum region's past. And my recent trip to the front lines near Ypres has inspired me to design some Pokemon, in order to commemorate this terrible chapter in history. So join me, soldier, as you've been enlisted into the war against YouTube ads. You will fight bravely and heroically for the fatherland, and you'll die a hero! Every army needs soldiers, and a good family-friendly way to make a soldier Pokemon is a trope of a tin soldier. I started off with a head. I had this very silly idea of making it a blockhead, a big rectangular face like the Blockstepper enemy from Mario 3D Worlds. To make this relatively dark concept more lighthearted, I tried to give it a cute and approachable face, with a big cubic nose, round eyes and also red blushy cheeks. This big square head, that resembles that of a villager, would of course have to be half of its entire size, at the minimum. Like, come on, obviously. These Pokemon will have an important part to play in the lore and the history of the region. And I can't share everything with you guys, but let's just say their purpose was a bit more realistic than just being regular toys. Europe has historically had an obsession with tin soldiers like this one. Just think of the classic fairy tales like the Tin Soldier and the many toy soldier collections by enthusiasts. And that fascination includes the lowlands as well. This Tinktank, which is its name, takes inspiration from classical British soldiers, with bright red colors and a white cross on its body, as well as a feather-shaped ornament on its head. Getting the shape right with these Pokemon was the hardest part, honestly. I struggled a lot with getting a good cubical shape, but I feel it turned out pretty well with this one. When you think of the deadliest battles in human history, you're likely reminded of battles like Verdun, Stalingrad, and D-Day. But technically speaking, Ypres is arguably the most deadly battle in human history. Sort of. It lasted over the course of 4 years, being nearly as long as the entire war itself. And it was fought in 4 crucial phases. Together, these 4 battles account for anywhere from 1 million to nearly 2 million casualties. That is about 15% of all total soldier casualties in the entire war. All of that for this relatively insignificant city. The reason the Entente and Germans fought so hard for Ypres is because it was the gateway to the sea. Most British supplies and divisions that wanted to reinforce the rest of the front would come through Ypres. So having control of the city was crucial in any victory for the Germans, which is why they fought so hard to reach it. In the end, they never did, but they got damn close during the 3rd battle specifically. We need reinforcements, quickly! Bring forth the Tinktank! Tinktank. From Tink, the sound metal makes, and Tank, an invention during the First World War. Also tin, like a tin soldier, and together it sounds like it's marching. Tink, tank, tink, tank.
Tinktank, the weapon Pokemon. a fighting and steel type. Long ago, there was a devastating war between two factions. Both of these factions created these Pokémon to fight for them. They're the first widespread artificial Pokémon. They still diligently roam the areas they were poised to defend, and will attack trespassers on sight. They seem unaware that their war has ended. It has the abilities Mass Morale, Steelworker, and the hidden ability Defiant.
The ability Mass Morale boosts the attack stat by 2 stages when there's another red Tinktank on the field. I quite enjoy this Tinktank. Very adorable, yet also morbidly dark if you think about it. There's more to this Pokémon that I have yet to reveal though, and I can't wait to show you more. But for now, let's have a quick detour. First off, I took some pictures on my trip to the Westhoek, so I'll be showing you guys the occasional glimpse into the hidden ruins of this devastating conflict. Tinktank was really cute, but maybe a bit dark. That's probably what you're thinking right now, but ooh boy, you ain't seen nothing yet. There is a very important invention that was crucial to the Battle of Ypres that I really needed to mention today as well. Mustard gas. Mustard gas and other deadly chemical weapons like it were another terrible weapon during the First World War. In fact, they were arguably the worst one yet. Gases as weapons were invented by the German alchemist Fritz Haber before the war had started. But the first real large-scale usage in warfare was in Ypres, when the Germans, on the 22nd of April 1915, attacked the French lines with chlorine gas. The French soldiers had no idea what to do. This brand new devastating weapon was scarily effective. So effective even, that the Germans hadn't realized they had managed to punch a massive hole in the front lines. Their hesitation caused the German advance to halt quickly, as British troops took over French positions. If it wasn't for that hesitation, this single attack could have maybe even led to a German victory in the war. I wanted it to be an eerie little creep, but not disturbing outright. I think the inherent concept of a mustard gas Pokémon is already disturbing enough, so this guy will be cute instead. I took inspiration from the gas masks, a grimly iconic image from the war that kind of resembles the face of a bird. So I decided an owl would be a fun secondary inspiration. It wears a trench coat tightly wrapped around it. However, pungent yellow gas still leaks from behind its mask. The idea is that this Pokémon is actually made entirely of gas, but uses discarded clothes in order to keep it from spreading and hurting people. Don't worry, it would mostly be safe to train. As long as you're careful with it, and if you cover your mouth, your eyes, your hands, your entire body, make sure the gas doesn't touch you. Oh, and also maybe visit the doctor once or twice, just to make sure. Lethal gas would rear its ugly head often during the war, and the effects of them were very grim. For the sake of keeping this video accessible, I'm not going to go into the details, but you could expect severe burns, blindness, and absolutely death. Luckily, chemical weapons have been banned ever since 1925. However, since then, chemical weapons have sadly been used on certain occasions. During the Iran and Iraq War, in China by the Japanese during World War II, by the Assad regime in Syria, and there's rumors of chemical attacks in Ukraine by the Russians. So despite how abhorrent these methods of warfare are, power-hungry people will sadly still use them. This is Boogas, from Boo, Gas, and Boogie.
Boogas, the chemical Pokémon, a ghost and poison type. It is said these Pokémon were manifested when a terrible atrocity devastated the land it roams. Inside their cloaks, there's only a nauseous mist. Those who have tried to peek behind the mask of this little Pokémon didn't live to tell the tale. Professionals advise against training this Pokémon. It has the ability Poison Mist. The ability Poison Mist puts up a new terrain type, Poison Terrain. Poison Terrain would poison every non-poison and steel type Pokémon in the terrain. It also boosts poison type moves.
I don't want this entire video to be all doom and gloom, okay? I'm still making silly Pokemon after all. So let's cheer up a little. Put on some gloves and give Boogas a little pat on the head. He needs it, you need it, I need it, we all need it. Now I'm gonna do a classic Gary move. And reveal that I once again gave it a different form. Yeah, okay, I know that I have 8 Pokemon. Technically 10 Pokemon already that have different forms. Okay, I promise to dial it down a little. After the next Pokemon. I'm making another form for Tinktank. Okay, this is the last Pokemon. For real this time, okay? I just had such a good idea for this Pokemon. So it will get 3 different forms. A red form, a blue form, and a third more sinister form. Red and blue have traditionally always been the colors pitted against each other on the battlefield. For example, Star Wars, Team Fortress 2 and Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. So of course the red Tinktank needs a blue counterpart. Or should I say more accurately, enemy! This form of Tinktank takes a lot more inspiration from the German army, specifically the iconic Prussian soldiers, with their dark blue uniforms and spiked helmets. They were very dapper looking. Once again, shaping was the big problem with this one. I really struggled getting the head right, and in the end I think it kind of turned out too big. But that's okay. The blue Tinktank gets the best attributes. A silly mustache. I love a silly mustache, especially on a Pokemon like this. During my visit to the Westhoek, I got to visit 2 different war cemeteries. A German one and a British one. And the difference between them was quite astounding. Here's a few pictures of the German cemetery. Each of these stones has the remains of at least 4 to sometimes a dozen German soldiers that lost their lives in the trenches. The cemetery itself was rather small, but still paid respect to the German deaths. However, it becomes obvious who won the war when I show you the second cemetery. Tinktank. Spoilers by the way, Germany lost World War I. I'm sorry. Yeah, the difference is pretty noteworthy, isn't it? Tinktank is the biggest World War I cemetery in the world. There are over 12,000 Commonwealth troops buried here, as well as 2 unknown German soldiers. I have an area in the Fumetasm region that's inspired by Tinktank. But after visiting it, I realized how poor of an adaptation that really was. So I've decided to update the map a little bit. Bleibt standhouden! Wir dürfen diese britischen Schweine nicht gewinnen lassen! Wait, since when do you know German?
Schick den blauen Tinktank rein.
Schick den blauen Tinktank rein!
Tinktank, the weapon Pokemon. A fighting and steel type. Long ago, there was a devastating war between 2 factions. Both of these factions created these Pokemon to fight for them. They're the first widespread artificial Pokemon. They still diligently roam the areas they were poised to defend, and will attack trespassers on sight. They seem unaware that their war has ended. It has the abilities Mass Morale, Steel Worker, and the hidden ability Defiant.
The way you'd find red Tinktank and blue Tinktank could be different between the 2 versions, with the red Tinktank being found more frequently in Pokemon West and the blue Tinktank more frequently in Pokemon East. And a fun interaction I think they could have is when a red and blue Tinktank come across each other. They'll automatically attack each other. I think it would also be cool if similarly other rival Pokemon would also do this in the wild. Like Zangoose attacking the Viper and Heatmore hunting Durant. Wild Pokemon battling each other in the overworld sounds so cool. Anywho, which side do you support? Let me know in the comments below. The scrumptious red Tinktank or the uber cool blue Tinktank? My accents are horrible. This is a broadcast to all our patriotic young men. War is coming, and I want you to like and subscribe to join the Burmy Army. The Barmy, if you will. For the United States of Gary. For Boogas evolution, I wanted it to be a lot more menacing and unsettling than before. It would still keep the same dark inspirations as its pre-evolution, but I leaned in much heavier on the idea of a plague doctor as well, with a lanky physique covered by a long trench coat, and an eerie bird-like mask. The plague was also a massive deal in the lowlands. While Italy was definitely the region that struggled the most because of it, the rest of Europe was also devastated. And an estimated 30 to 50% of Europeans perished because of the Black Death. So quite a fitting tertiary inspiration for this already dark and menacing Pokemon. I like to imagine that Fumetasm here would have some kind of relationship with my other ghost type that takes inspiration from war. Grimorn. This Pokemon was inspired by the Grim Reaper and Wandering Spirits, as well as All Souls. And in the Halloween video I made way back then, I revealed its backstory through a little ghost story. Go check it out if that sounds interesting. Just like Grimorn, Fumetasm would have a pretty dark backstory to its creation as well. But it's nothing I can tell you guys yet. From behind its floating mask, Fumetasm has a cloud of deadly smoke. It's a lot less trainable than its pre-evolution, that's for sure. The way I shaped this flowing mist takes inspiration from Japanese ghosts such as the Yuri, typically depicted as thin, lanky women in white robes and dark flowing hair. I twisted this imagery to get this pretty cool silhouette. Quite fun. The eyes on its mask, similar to its pre-evolution, are shaped like radiation symbols. Radiation isn't really an aspect of the design. I frankly just chose it because it looks cool. And it's also way easier to draw than the biohazard symbol. So many circles! In its dex entry you'll read quite the worrying factoid. Anywhere it wanders is rendered inhospitable. This is because it's also inspired on the Zone Rouge. The Zone Rouge is a zone stretching 1,200 square miles of French land that's been rendered completely inhospitable because of the Great War. This land is riddled with lost bombs and grenades that never exploded. The soil has even been heavily polluted by lead, mercury, and the many chemical weapons used during the war, even over 100 years later. This Pokemon serves as a grim reflection of the horrors of war and the devastation it reaps even decades after its past. This is Fumetasm, from Fume and Phantasm.
Fumetasm, the chemical Pokemon, a poison and ghost type. Wherever it wanders is rendered inhospitable for hundreds of years. It only stays in places that have already been destroyed. It isolates itself from people and Pokemon out of fear of harming them. If handled correctly, a skilled trainer can put an end to its loneliness. It has the ability Poison Mist.
Fumetasm is definitely my favorite Pokemon in this video, but I want to hear your opinions. Do you guys like it as much as I do, or is it maybe a little bit too morbid for your taste? I totally get that, that's fair. There's one more Pokemon I have to unveil. A very special one. The third form for Tinktank. This form will be known as Tinktank Rust. Rust as in rusting metal, but also rust, as in the Dutch word for resting. I got very inspired by the release of wild robots and other similar tropes like that, such as the Garden Bastion from Overwatch. Overgrown robots who live in the wild and protect nature are one of my favorite tropes that I love a lot. So I thought it would be really fitting to make a Pokemon inspired by this. It would be very similar to the other Tinktank. However, it's a mix between the two. The idea here is that it has parts of it replaced with those of another color of Tinktank. I also added plenty of moss and flowers growing on top of it, and its colors will be a faded rusty orange, hiding its true original color from many decades ago. This would be a very special Pokemon, in fact, kind of an event Pokemon. The way you get it in-game is by visiting the Ghost type, or steel type. I'm not quite sure yet. Specialist of the region in the postgame. He would hand you out this Pokemon, as he himself has a very special relationship with it. I'll reveal more on the Steel/Ghost type specialist later, but for now, just know that this will be their ace. It would be a gift from them after you complete some kind of quest. The Rust form of Tinktank will have increased stats and a different typing. Look at it like Eternal Flower Floette, kind of. I took inspiration from the many ruins left behind after the war. Here's some pictures of old discarded weapons and blades during the war. This poor little Tinktank will have faced the same fate as these other weapons. Discarded and forgotten. I'll miss Larry. He was such a brave soldier, a good brother, and most importantly, a friend. I'm not dead yet, you idiots! I can still hear him. And his annoying voice.
Tinktank, Rust form, the weapon Pokemon. A Ghost and Steel type. This Pokemon used to serve a great purpose. Now it is a discarded machine, forgotten to time. Inside of it resides a strong soul, however. It stumbles through the region, trying desperately to fulfill its duty, to care for other weaker Pokemon and protect them from those who try to harm them. It has the ability Soul Hearts.
This special Pokemon looks really good in my opinion, and I like its unique idea and lore. I honestly think we should get more of these unique individual Pokemon forms, like the spiky-eared Pichu and the Dada Zarude. They add a lot to the Pokemon world and its lore and characters. But enough of that sentimentality. I had a lot of fun with this video. The World Wars are one of my favorite topics, as they interest me greatly. Even though we don't really need a third one, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this more serious video. I had to release all of my silliness I had into my April Fool's video for this one. After my trip to the Westhoek, the inspiration for this gloomy video idea just took over. I even have a little souvenir from the trip. This is a shard from an old artillery shell. It was just sitting there on a random parking. So I yoinked it and it's mine now. But anyways, have another wonderful day. I've been Gary the Motham. Gotta catch me later.